Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. I'm going to give it a couple more minutes to see if we can get a few more folks in. It is exactly 11, but I'll probably give it maybe till 11:02 or 11:03, and then we can go ahead and get started. But thank you again for joining. Today's topic is an introduction to the legal code, i.e. the AS Constitution, bylaws, and standing policies. So we'll get started here in just a couple more minutes. All right, everyone, it's 11:03 or just about, and so I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Holly Mays. I'm the Assistant Director of Governmental Affairs for Associated Students. Prior to this role, I held the position as the Legislative Liaison, so I've worked closely with the legal code in my role here with Associated Students. And so today we're going to talk about the legal code. And I want to preface this by saying that this session, along with the other training sessions, um, are going to be recorded. And so if you have an issue with being recorded, please feel free to leave your camera off. Of course, I would love to see you, and feel free to ask any questions that you have. But if you would not like your face to be recorded, then please feel free to leave your camera off. I'd also like to introduce my colleague, Tim, whose photo just appeared on the screen if you want to say hello.
Good morning, everybody.
Tim works as the campus support advisor, and so he will also be able to answer any questions that you have in the chat if you want to ask them. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to start off with a couple of questions. Hopefully you all are interested in jumping in this morning. Does anybody want to unmute themselves and answer for me what is legal code? Anybody knows? If you're a senator on the call, you should know.
It's like guidelines and duties for each entity or VCU to follow.
Yes, awesome, thank you. I think that was Catherine for jumping in. Yes, so the legal code is the guiding documents of Associated Students. So it contains our policies, the bylaws for our various organizations, etc. And so does anybody know what the three sections of the AS Legal Code are? And I'll give you a hint that you may know if you read the title of this training.
Is it
Quiet this morning.
Is it Constitution, bylaws, and then policies and procedures?
It is. Thank you, Verlene. Okay, and so I'll talk a little bit about why legal code is important as we go further through the rest of the presentation. But I want to talk a little bit about who writes legal code and how it can be changed. And so to answer the first portion of this question about who writes legal code is as I mentioned, the legal code are the policies and procedures of the association, and our AS Senate, which is the legislative branch of our governmental structure, has the power of legislative initiative. So our Senate is responsible for all amendments to the AS Legal Code. And amendments to the legal code are done through what is called a bill. And so if you are on this call and you are a senator, then you may have already taken our session on how to write legislation, so this should be familiar to you. But if not, or if you are a member of a BCU, then hopefully this highlights for you the relationship that you could have with our senators as you may potentially look to amend your bylaws within your committee if you want to create different policies within Associated Students. A couple of years ago, we had a policy that created like safe spaces within AS, so that could be something that you may be interested in working on. The sustainability policy comes out of our standing policies and procedures, so if you are interested in any of those types of things, this may be so Phoebe asked, what is a BCU? Sorry, a BCU stands for Board, Commission, and Unit. So that would be if you're a part of like EAB, right, as Environmental Affairs Board, COC, Committee on Committees, they're a BCU. We just say BCU for short instead of Board, Commission, and Unit, but that is what it stands for. And in some places in legal code, you will also see BCC, which stands for Board, Commission, and Committee. So if you're reading it, they're kind of the same thing. We just switched over some terminology. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about, not too far into depth, about what the difference between a bill and a resolution is, mostly highlighting the section here on the left in the like reddish orange color that's talking about again, just highlighting this piece of bills are what amends legal code, but I'm actually, let me skip ahead a couple slides here. And I'm going to talk about the different sections of legal code and what is contained in them, and then we can go back and talk about how those can be changed if you're interested. So in the Constitution, I'm going to try to squeeze this cube here a little bit smaller so it doesn't obstruct the view here. So the first section of the AS Legal Code is the Constitution. And the Constitution has what we refer to as ultimate precedents. So if you've taken a poli-sci class or you're familiar with the like ultimate precedents like idea within our like federal government with the Constitution and our nationwide governmental structure, if you will, a similar concept applies here in that because we have different sections within our legal code, we have our Constitution, bylaws, and standing policies. Any contradiction which arises between the other sections, right? So something in the Constitution says like X, Y, and Z is not allowed, and then in the bylaws it says that it is. The Constitution, because it contains ultimate precedents, is the language that we would abide by. And so because of this ultimate precedents, as it's referred to, any changes to this section of the legal code need to be done by both a vote of the Senate and by a vote of the student body, which is done by a constitutional amendment. You can see here in the slide, 2/3 of the Senate needs to vote on a like constitutional amendment bill. And then that essentially puts the bill onto the ballot, and you all will vote each spring. And so last year, for example, there was a bill that was passed by Senate to add 2 additional seats to the Senate, to international student representative seats. And that was added through a constitutional amendment that was passed by the Senate, and then it was on the ballot this last spring, and the student body voted yes. And so now we have, in our next upcoming election, there will be 2 additional Senate seats. And so the topics that you're going to find contained in the Constitution are going to be the Student Bill of Rights. It's going to be that clause about the precedents of the Constitution. This is also where student fees are contained. So If you want to see the language surrounding our student fees, it's also broken down by the amount of fee that goes where. It's not comprehensive, meaning that if you're wanting to have a more detailed look at where each dollar, if you will, goes. Hopefully you attended our sessions with Cindy Lopez where she talked about the budget. If not, you'll definitely want to catch the recording if that is something that you're interested in. Also contained in the Constitution is going to be the legislative, executive, and judicial department legal code. So this talks about the role of the legislative branch, the different executive officers and their roles, as well as the judicial branch of our government, which is our judicial council. The Constitution also talks about the role of the executive director. So if you've met Maricela, that is her, and this outlines just a small portion of her responsibilities, but the expectation, if you will, of associated students and her role within our organization. This also talks about elections. Our election code is contained in one document, but it does pull from different sections of our legal code. So there are some items in the Constitution which are written about elections. There's also some language in our bylaws and policies as well. The Constitution is also going to talk about how to make amendments both to the Constitution and other sections of the legal code, as well as changes to the bylaws. And so the reason why, students ultimately have written this document over many, many, many years, and it's a living document. And so it's updated every single year, really every quarter. When I worked as a legislative liaison, and I still do this, we update the legal code as it is changed. And so every year, Senate will pass new bills that make changes to these, and the students, as this has developed, have had these different sections of the legal code to kind of break up different topic areas, to kind of highlight the things that maybe need more consensus in order to change. And the Constitution is one of those pieces, is that it's been identified as the almost like the mission statement, if you will, the things that are like the core pieces of the association, of the organization, and it was really important to them to be able to have the student body vote if there's going to be any changes to this section. And so that's kind of why it's been broken up into these different sections. And it's kind of like, our federal constitution is that it's kind of the principles of governing, if you will. And so other legislation that's passed at a federal, even a state level, those are kind of the additions, if you will, to the Constitution. If at any point you have any questions, please feel free to jump in, or if something I'm saying doesn't make sense, please feel free to ask any questions. The next section of the AS Legal Code is the bylaws, and this is the most lengthy section of the legal code. And the reason for this is because it contains all of the different sections of our BCUs, our boards, commissions, and units. And so if you are a part of a BCU, you'll know, if you've heard like to look at your legal code, this is the section that they're referring to. And so each BCU is going to have a charge, it's going to have a list of their members, it's going to have a list of roles and responsibilities for those members, and those are all things that have been co-authored by that BCU and a senator and have been passed by Senate and are contained in this bylaws section of the legal code. And so some of the topics that you're going to find here in addition to that are going to be what's referred to as membership. So like associated students membership, like what that role means and being able to like equally participate and things like that. You're also going to find more information about the legislative branch and the executive officers branch. So each of the executive offices have, or each of the officers rather, have an office. So there are members within that office, like a chief of staff, a treasurer, et cetera, kind of the same way that our BCUs have different members within their committee. Our executive officers do as well. Our president also has a cabinet. So the attorney general, for example, is a position that's on the president's cabinet. The chief financial officer, these are all positions that are held by students. And so this section here in the bylaws is outlining all of these roles and responsibilities of these different positions that are held. Like I mentioned, also the legislative branch. So this is where you'll find the duties and responsibilities of Senate members. This is where you'll also find mandatory training requirements, where you'll find information about legislative committees. So if you're interested in like Finance and Business Committee, if you're interested in the Internal Affairs Committee, the roles and responsibilities and the functions of all of those committees are outlined here in the bylaws, as well as the judicial branch. So the different positions within the Judicial Council, their different roles and responsibilities can all be found there as well. Also, language about the Attorney General, the Office of the Controller, Committee on Committees. These are all different positions within the association and within different branches of our governmental structure. You're also going to find language about AS Assembly. Hopefully you all have been to an assembly when we were on campus, but AS Assembly is hosted every year by Committee on Committees, and it's designed to kind of be a networking opportunity for everyone within the association to kind of get together, talk about the state of things, and to be able to kind of be in community. You're also going to find language about the AS Fellowship, which hopefully you will hear more information about soon. The fellowship, the Pyramid Fellowship program rather, is a really cool opportunity for students who have not been involved in AS to work with a board, commission, or unit, or work with a senator, or within an executive office. And it kind of works like an internship where they can kind of get to know the work of the office, they can collect honoraria, and they can get some experience working in one of these offices or with one of these groups. You're also going to find the section on honoraria. So if you're wanting to know what the honorary committee is, what they do, how they make their decisions, what's the language that's written about them, the policies, if you will. You will find all of that there. Like I mentioned, with the elections regulations, there is additional information contained in our bylaws there. And then also our AS and Isla Vista space. So if you're familiar with the Pardall Center, the Legal Resource Center, the Isla Vista Tenants Union, you'll find language there that talks about all of those spaces that we hold in Isla Vista. And then the last section of the legal code is the standing policies and procedures. And similar to the Constitution, this is a pretty small section. And the reason for this is because, like I mentioned, this is a living document, and our policies and procedures are always developing. And the tricky part with documenting our policies and procedures, and I'm sure you all can hear me on this one, is that we often will develop a way of doing things and it's not always documented. And that's the same with our student groups, with our Senate or our executive officers, is that sometimes we get into a pattern or the way of doing things and it's not necessarily documented. Not that every little detail needs to be documented, but you can see some of the key topics here, like our minute and meeting procedures. Those are super important to document so that we have a structure and an outline and expectations that like really helps the functioning of the organization run really well when we have documentation for kind of how we do things, so that everybody can jump in and know where we're at and things like that. Some other topics that you're going to find here are code of conduct, both the AS code of conduct and the travel code of conduct. It's been quite some time since we've had students travel, but we do have a travel code of conduct if we ever do wind up traveling within this academic year, you will know about. And this basically just talks about, participating in the sessions, if you're traveling somewhere, the use of student fees responsibly, things like that are kind of talked about in our travel procedures. You're also going to find some information about orientation and transition. These areas are pretty sparse, but they have been started. You're also going to find the policies and procedures of the Pardall Center there. The Pardall Center does have a governance board that helps run the operations of the PC there. And then the last piece that you're going to find in our policies and procedures is the last two appendices, which are the academic senate committees and the campus administrative advisory committees. I won't get too much into it because on Friday, when Maricela meets with us, it talks about the structure and functions of AS. She's going to talk about shared governance, and I just want to highlight that these two appendices are listing some shared governance committees. And so it has been always super important for students to have a say in the governance of the university, quite literally. And so students have asked for and negotiated to be able to have positions on these campus committees so that they can have a seat at the table when we're talking about building new buildings on campus, or rerouting bike paths, or adding new majors. There's a board for the USEN. So they just this last year were talking about repairing the elevator in the USEN, or talking about different vendors that go in the USEN. And so this highlights those different committees. I want to go back here in my slideshow. So I want to touch a little bit before I actually show you the legal code itself. You can see what the document looks like, and I'll show you kind of how I look for things when I'm trying to find something within the legal code. It is quite a lengthy document. It's around 380 pages. And so it can be kind of daunting if you're opening it for the first time and you're wondering, I heard that I can find the legal code of my group here, but now I'm looking at this 400-page document. What do I do now? So we'll cover that. But I want to talk about how these different sections of the legal code can be amended. So I talked a little bit about how the Constitution can be amended, but I just want to circle back on the bylaws and the standing policies and procedures. When I talked about earlier that our Senate has the power of legislative initiative, they also amend through a bill the sections of the bylaws as well as the standing policies and procedures. So if through your research or through your work as a VCU or as a senator, you come across different sections of the legal code that you're wanting to change, a bill would be the way that that's done. And without getting too much into the weeds of how they change, I highly encourage you to watch the recording of how to write legislation when it is posted on the website. If you're wanting to know more of the like logistical details about like literally how to put together a bill or a resolution, if you're wanting to know that information. But connecting with a senator is a really great option to be able to talk through this project that you're wanting to work on. And then also our AS staff. So like I mentioned, I work in the governmental affairs team. And so we're able to meet with you and talk about what that change could look like. That's kind of our thing, if you will, here in AS. You know, everybody knows Maricela and Cindy if you're wanting, you know, financial advice or to talk about requisitions or things like that. And our team is is super good at things like legal code and student government related topics. So we'll definitely be able to help you there if you have any questions. So I'm gonna stop my screen share for a second and I'm gonna pull up the legal code so you can see what the document looks like. I'm actually going to go to the website here really quick. And I'll show you where you can find the most current copy on the website. If you're wanting to download it, there's going to be a new version coming out just a little bit before fall quarter starts to kind of kick off the beginning of the year. Okay. Share this again. Okay. So I'm here on the AS website. I don't know if you can still see the search bar here with the screen share window on my end is at least covering it. But if you go to as.ucsb.edu and then I went to the tab Documents and then Governing Documents, you'll see there's a section here on the left for legal code and then the section on the right for the financial policies and procedures. And so the financial policies and procedures are a separate document that our finance and business committee works off of. So if you've ever taken the authorized signers workshop, that references this financial policies and procedures, and that talks about our like spending and budget and all things related to finance. But as far as the legal code goes, if you want to look at the most recent version, which is the one from last academic year, the 2019-2020, let me see if it'll let me, perfect. Okay, and so you will download it. Mine thankfully opened up in another tab and didn't try to launch Adobe, which would have potentially taken a couple of minutes. So you can see here the legal code is 370 pages. Of course, there's things like the title page, this table of contents, and so, but this is what it looks like. You can see here for the last 2 years, I've been the one that's prepared the legal code, and by prepare, I mean as senators write bills to amend the legal code, I take that language and I literally have the master copy and go in and literally change the words within the document. The legal code every year is also reviewed by our executive director, Maricela, as well as the internal vice president for that year. And so that was Ali Adam last year. And so Tiana White this year is going to be reviewing the legal code. And this is so that there are multiple eyes on the changes that are being made. This document is super important to the association because, like I've said, it is our governing document. And so we have a lengthy review of it before it's released, just to make sure that everything is good to go and it looks polished and all of that. And so I want to talk a little bit about this table of contents here. Zoom in a little bit. I know that text is kind of small. It looks a little different when it's printed because you can get away with having really large font in a PDF, and then when it's printed, it doesn't quite fit exactly the same way. And so this is the table of contents for the Constitution. So you can see here there's the preamble, the Student Bill of Rights, like I mentioned, talking about fees, new fees, existing fees, the legislative department. So you can see here there's these different articles and then subsections. And so the subsections are going to have that different language. I'm working on, for this upcoming year, figuring out how to hyperlink all of these different sections, much easier than doing it by hand. But for now, you could just look at the page and then scroll through. So that's a little bit of a bummer, but working to improve for sure. And so you'll see the articles here kind of contain those topics that I mentioned earlier, right? The executive department branch, judicial department, executive director, elections. And then you can see, like under elections, for example, there's like term of office, the time that the elections are conducted, the procedures, the runner-up system, amendments, how to propose them, etc. So that's kind of what's contained in the Constitution. You can kind of see that here in this table of contents. It's also not very long. You can see it only goes until page 12, but you're able to see the different topics within these sections here. And that's generally where I'll start if I'm looking for like a specific topic. And I also do lots of text searches, and I'll show you how to do that here in just a second. And then the next section is the bylaws. And so you can again see the different topics that I mentioned, right? Like membership. So this talks about the membership fees that are paid, the officers, the disbursement of funds. So like how our lock-in works, the budget process, again, the executive officers, their different offices. So you can see, again, all of these topics here. The next version of the legal code, which don't have the file open right now, but I'm working to break out these different sections so they don't look as cramped. But for now, you can see like the article is that like main header, and I'll kind of show you what it looks like when we get, I'll scroll down into a different section. Boards and commissions, units, and some of these are broken down by unit type. So like our enterprise units, which you'll learn about, I think that it's next week. You'll get to hear from the bike shop, the legal resource center, etc. Those are enterprise units. Philanthropy, advocacy, etc. So not to get too long-winded, but you can just see here again the different articles, and then the subsections have the different topics that are talked about. Again, with the standing policies and procedures, they're numbered by policy here. Go down. So this is a section of the Constitution, like the very beginning of the legal code. So you'll see like article is named, And so this talks about the name of the organization is the Associated Students of the University of California, Santa Barbara. And then the next article is Student Bill of Rights. And then the subsections here are outlining what all of those rights are. So you can see as you're scrolling through it, you can see the different articles that are kind of bolded and underlined, the different sections that are literally numbered here, the monitoring of student fees, new fees, etc. And so, like I said, when I'm looking for something specific, so like if I wanted to find the Office of the Controller, I could scroll to page 116, and you're going to want to use the number that's here on the bottom. So you can scroll to page 116, you'll see the Office of the Controller. But if I wanted to find something less specific, so like if I wanted to see, what is all the language about like trainings, I would hit, I have a Mac, so it's Command F. On a PC, you can use Control F for find. I think that there might be a longer way of doing that. Yeah, if you go to edit and then find. So then I could do like trainings, for example, and it'll show me all of the, you can see account up there, and you can do like training or trainings. And so this is what I use if I'm looking for like more of like a topic. I'll go through like keywords. So we can see like in elections there's something about like orientation and training period. And so I'm like, no, that's not what I'm looking for. I want to know like as a senator what trainings I need to go through. So I'm seeing here, okay, this is about the term of somebody's office, and they're talking about orientation and training. Okay, maybe that's not right. And so I can continue to just like quickly jump through all of these different sections, and then here I see, okay, this is a section on the internal vice president, right? So I see training popped up here, and then I can see like, oh, okay, there's this training that needs to be done by week 6 or something, and that would be kind of how I find this specific section, because otherwise, if I were the IVP or I were a student trying to find what my requirements are, and particularly for our executive officers, right, they have language contained in different parts of the legal code. It's kind of difficult to remember, like, was this portion contained in the Constitution, or was it the bylaws, or et cetera? And so for me, text searching works super well to kind of jump through the topics, because then I'm not like trying to jump back and forth between different sections, and it just works for my brain because I can search for a word and I can just scroll through these arrows super fast, and so that's just what works for me. I want to pause really quick. We've got 10, 20 minutes depending on how many questions y'all have, and I want to see, does anybody have any questions? Does this make sense? Did you learn something new? Thoughts, complaints, perhaps something that doesn't make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Thank you.
Thanks, Karsten. And I can't see the name of the person that has their hand lowered, or hand raised rather, but I see your hand and your photos to the left of me.
Okay. I guess my question would be, for bylaws and standing policies and procedures, is the process for changing them the same as changing the Constitution? I didn't quite catch how you would change either of those two.
Yeah, so for all different sections of the legal code, what they're going to share in common is that portion of needing a bill to change them and having Senate approve that bill. what differentiates the bylaws and the standing policies from the Constitution is that the Constitution is also then voted on by the student body. So that bill language then becomes crafted into ballot language, and then it becomes its final form, if you will, once it's been voted on by the student body. So all three sections, no matter what, are going to need a bill. It's just that the Constitution has this other layer of then the first step is the bill rather than the last. So if you're wanting to like change your like bylaws of your group, when your bill passes, you're good to go. It's effective immediately. But the constitutional like bill to amend that is like your first step. Like, okay, Senate's approved it, now it's going onto the ballot, and so it doesn't become final until it's voted on by the student body.
Okay, sounds good. Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thanks everyone in the chat. I don't know if that answered your question, Kai, about who can change the AS Constitution. And so, yeah, it's a combination of a lot of folks. It's like I mentioned, the Senate is going to pass the bill, and then the student body is going to vote in the spring election. So it doesn't like kick off an election, if you will. So if there's like, for example, this most recent bill that amended the Constitution, the one that added the international seats, the language of the bill didn't get onto the ballot until spring because the elections board, they run our elections, and so as the year goes on, they kind of will collect those, if you will. It doesn't happen a ton. Granted, I have only been here about two years and a few months, so I don't have as much institutional background, but from that experience, I know that at least in this case, they waited. The bill was passed sometime, I believe, in the winter quarter, which isn't too long of a wait, but then it went on to the ballot, and then the students voted on it. And then, yes, I will show the slide on bills and resolutions again. I don't know if you all can see this now. It's hard to tell if when I expand this screen thing here to see if I am catching anybody's raised hands to make sure that it's not covering up the window that I'm trying to show you. So hopefully I haven't been covering up anything. But this is the slide on the bills and resolutions. And so when I talk about how to write legislation, when I do that like training, we talk about the difference between the two and kind of thinking about if you're wanting to, like, you have a project in mind, thinking about strategically what would be the best option for how you would want to implement that change, and thinking about, would a bill be a better fit for the type of work that you're wanting to do, or a resolution. And so resolutions are really great. You can kind of see here in the middle, they also take effect immediately. They're super impactful to the campus, our community, the association. You really still have a lot of like influence and impact there. Resolutions are unique in the sense that they can provide direction to staff, to each other, right? Senators will have directed each other to create Facebook pages for their office. There can be resolutions condemning different topics, right? So there's been resolutions condemning white supremacy. There's been resolutions condemning the conflict at the border a few years ago. And so they can like take a political stance and position that bills don't necessarily, not because they can't, but when we're looking at a bill, it's more like policy focused. So the way that the language is written is more about like specific like roles, responsibilities, what is allowed or isn't allowed. And so it's not that it couldn't be political in nature, right? When students wrote a policy creating a safe space for AS, they made it clear that it was related to not wanting immigrations and customs enforcement to be in AS spaces, but the way that they wrote it was just about like, these are the spaces that we don't want them to enter. These are, we don't want them to answer questions, those kinds of things. They were about like specific tasks. And resolutions only last until the Senate term ends. So whenever there's that transition or turnover, if you will, the binding part of the resolution expires, if you will. And so our legal code is that like institutional documentation or institutional memory, if you will, in that whenever things are put into legal code, they stay that way until they're changed again. So the document just continues to grow and be added to. And, you know, like if you add a position to your board, you don't need to like renew it, if you will, every year, unless the next year you decide, okay, I want to add 2 more positions, or actually I want to take away that one. You would go through the process to change it again. Are there any other questions, thoughts? Thank you. I'm glad that it's helpful. Of course, I'm available to answer any questions. I'll be holding, if you will, office hours in the fall, and so feel free to jump in those. I'll have those. I'm trying to think. Well, I usually include office hours in my email signature, but if you haven't emailed me before or they're brand new, you wouldn't know them. So I will connect with Judy-Ann, our web developer. She's an awesome person if you haven't met her. If you're in a group and you need help with your website, definitely connect with her. But she also updates our AS staff website. So I will have her help me get my office hours posted there, but feel free to reach out if you are processing this information and you think of other questions later, which I sometimes tend to do myself. Any other live questions? Try to make sure I don't miss any raised hands, so feel free to jump in if I missed your hand. Okay, it's not looking like I'm seeing any other questions.